So, by the way, so there are people who work on modeling supernovae, like supernova, right? And there are different ways of having a supernova. Core collapse supernova is a very common one. We just kind of mentioned it, right? And now we're going to briefly review the events during such a core collapse. The iron core of a massive star grows larger than the Chandrasekhar mass. So core collapse pretty much, so when somebody says core collapse, they basically mean a massive star who has made a core of iron. Like it's basically grown an iron core in its belly. And that iron core has become bigger than the Chandrasekhar mass limit, which is around 1.4 solar masses. So it's not just like I'm gonna core collapse out of nowhere. Like it has an insanely Reese is just lying. He's like an electrical engineer and he has like a whole business. Oh, sorry. Did I say things about Belgium that I shouldn't? He does science for a living. Successfully. So he knows a lot. Ask him about batteries. I'm sure he knows about he knows everything about batteries, capacitors, inductors, circuits, electricity. The iron core of a massive star grows larger than the Chandrasekhar mass before a core collapse. No longer supported by degenerate electron pressure, the core starts to collapse. So basically, electron degeneracy pressure can't really support such a massive core anymore. Remember how white dwarfs are supported by electron degeneracy pressure. But the white dwarf mass limit is basically the Chandrasekhar limit, which is around 1.4 solar masses. If you're much bigger than that, if your core is much bigger than the size of a regular white dwarf, or around the Chandrasekhar mass limit, which is around 1.4 solar masses, electron degeneracy pressure can't really hold you together anymore. Protons and electrons now will combine to form neutrons, and 10 to the 57 neutrinos are produced in that process of where protons and electrons come together to make neutrons. All those neutrinos leave the star, carrying away energy from it. The collapsing neutron sphere is actually dense enough to be opaque to neutrinos, so it takes them a while to work their way out in a random walk. So if you're modeling this core collapse supernova, you'd have to model this as well. Basically, the neutrinos apparently have some trouble leaving this core, and so do a random walk out of the star. Next bullet, the neutron sphere is compressed slightly beyond the point where degenerate neutron pressure balances gravity and bounces back. So the neutron sphere is compressed slightly beyond the point where degenerate neutron pressure balances gravity and bounces back. Because at some point, you can't compress neutrons together anymore because a strong force is repulsive. So it's like gravity would have smooshed these things even more together, but the neutron degeneracy pressure, which is also ruled by strong force, doesn't let you come any closer than a certain point because the strong force is repulsive at smaller distances. The core bounce sends a shock wave through the outer layers of the star. So remember, we talked about shock waves when we talked about gamma ray bursts. So this is similar.